Hi there. The news drought is over. House of the Dragon just had their big Emmys for Your Consideration panel on March 6th in Los Angeles, and the entire cast was there. Even ones who didn't come to Season 1's panel, like Emma, Tom, Ewan, no, they were all there. And this was the first big public event for House of the Dragon in 6 months. 6 months of news drought is now over. Because it wasn't just one event. This marks the start of the big publicity campaign for the Emmys that HBO is going to be conducting behind the scenes, getting magazine and websites to do profiles on the lead actors, on just quietly urging news sites to run more stories on it. Hopefully this will kickstart the whole news cycle again, just as we're prepping for Season 3 filming reports in the next week or so. That this was a few days ago, that just today we got photos over Instagram of the cast members showing the table read is today as I'm making this. So they should be filming in the next 10 days or so. A lot of things are turning on again. They said we're going right back to the UK to start filming. Everything is starting. A couple of important new points, though, came out of the panel. I'm going to split this into two videos. The Condal talked about two interesting things. Doing this one first because it's the most important. Showrunner Ryan Condal gave his first remarks ever on what the structure of Season 3 will be like. And he mentioned that it will cover 4 major events from the book. So in this video, I'm going to introduce the discussion about what these could be, and then as filming season progresses, we'll try to confirm what parts of it we can. Obviously, because I am talking about future storylines, mega spoilers ahead. I'll be openly talking about character deaths and everything. This is your only warning, mega spoilers. Now, this is exactly what Ryan Condal said. Direct quote. Season 2 is huge. Season 3 is huger in many ways. There are, by my quick count on stage here, 4 major events from the book that we get to adapt and realize in 3 dimensions in this season. That's really exciting on a scope and scale perspective, and I think it's the thing the show does really well. The things that we're building are mind-boggling. And the way he says this, it's not narrative events like a duel or a dialogue confrontation. He's talking about major action set pieces. Now, everyone is certain that the first 2 out of 4 events are the Battle of the Gullet and the Fall of King's Landing. I mean, they openly said that the start of the season is the Battle of the Gullet. This is confirmed. Fall of King's Landing would be mostly dragon CGI, but still a huge sequence that would involve people looking up from city streets. Oh no, the dragons are flying ahead. So those are 2 major events. This is a lock. The question this video is addressing is what are the next 2, and what could be cut, what could be condensed. And to give my conclusion up front, I think the other 2 planned as major set pieces are the Battle by the Lakeshore and the first Battle of Tumbleton. But the key point here is we're not trying to make a wish list of what they should do. I've always on my channel tried to guess what they will do based on evidence. Particularly because they've shortened the season to 8 episodes, or worried about they could be really cutting things now. We have to be very careful about what we support with evidence. And of course the biggest question is what are they treating as the end point? And I dismiss out of hand, and you should too, any clickbaiter who says the battle above the God's Eye is this season. They just want attention, and those same clickbaiters, many of them were claiming that was at the end of Season 2. Because they wanted attention for views, for clicks, for money. They're lying. You should have figured out which ones are clickbaiters by this point, and which ones are reliable, based on our performance and reputation. But much depends on what they treat as a major set-piece event versus things they will cut entirely or leave off screen. But in between, there's a gray area of things that I think actually would appear on screen and in the narrative, just not as a major set piece. Case in point, how Season 2 handled the Battle of the Burning Mill. I consider that that was in Season 2, in condensed form, but I honestly think they handled it pretty well, decently. That they showed the build-up to it, the aftermath, and then both sides on their small councils discussing the strategic fallout. Because what matters is what's going on the map. So I was fine with that, even as internally I'm mourning that, we didn't get characters like Black Alley Blackwood, though they did name drop Ben Blackwood later in Season 2. But consider that Game of Thrones itself, in the early seasons, had major battles mostly off-screen, for budget reasons, and that forced them to focus on council scenes of people actually explaining their grand strategy, which was lifted straight from the books. That's why it made sense. But you had to have them pointing at a map going, here is the Stark army, we're feinting to the east with Tywin, but our real objective is in the west, where we'll make a sneak attack on Jaime's army and wipe them out. That had more planning in it than, anything in later Game of Thrones. It was just focused on empty spectacle, where it's just hordes of whites are coming at the screen, and it's just man-piling people. There was no strategy. So it was a narrative event in the story, Whispering Wood, all these other events, even if we didn't actually see it, or how, Green Fork, they said we had to knock out Tyrion because we didn't have the budget to do it. But in the narrative, they set it up and showed the aftermath, and there was planning. Even though, yes, I do enjoy dragon action as much as the next man, it's a matter of priority. That I want them to condense minor battles so they have budget left over for the cool dragon stuff and so forth. It's a matter of priority. With that being said, I think the third and fourth major set-piece events in Season 3 are probably Battle by the Lakeshore and then Tumbleton. Well, the one I'm most nervous about, that I'm not 100%, I'm about 90%, that we're going to get the Battle by the Lakeshore, also known as the Fish Feed. It is the biggest land battle of the entire war, and it's a bloodbath, that they're fighting among the reeds of the lakes. They said the fishes feasted on both sides that day from their corpses. But the Battle by the Lakeshore, fought on the shores of God's Eye Lake, it involves Rhaenyra's main army of River Lords plus Starks, versus the main Lannister army. And part of me is worried that they might not treat it as a major on-screen event, but downgrade it to be off-screen mostly like Burning Mill, because it doesn't have any dragons in it. But that was the entire point. They say we have to attack quickly, because if we wait for the dragons to come, they'll burn us out. The Vagar will come, and we have to hurry to rush their defenses before that happens. It's kind of a plot point. So I'm worried that, would they leave this off-screen? There aren't any dragons in it, there aren't really any Targaryens in it. Then again, we have the principle of Chekhov's gun. That if you introduce a gun into a story, you damn well need to actually fire it by the end of it. Simply, economy of scenes. You wouldn't waste so many setup scenes on something that happens off-screen. Objectively, they spent a lot of screen time already in Season 2 setting up the pieces. Daemon's entire Riverlands storyline, which even I admit should have been trimmed around the edges for screen time, like 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. I liked it. It's just, if there were rewrites, it should have been trimmed a little. Daemon's entire story in Season 2 was we need the Riverlands armies, and gathering them. And on top of that, screen time devoted to showing the full Lannister army arriving at Golden Tooth. And that wasn't little either. You saw, dozens of mounted cavalry riding up to a scene. They filmed this in live action. It wasn't CGI. And then a big scene at the Green Council of arguing about, all right, we'll get them in a pincer attack. Tell Jason Lannister to keep advancing from the west to the east. We'll attack from King's Landing. We'll flank them on two sides. They expended a lot of screen time on setting that up that it would be bizarre if they didn't show it on screen. Now, I don't know if it'll be at the scale it was in the book, but they'll show something. I don't know, maybe not as big as Rook's Rest, but something that you would consider noteworthy major event. I wonder if the Battle of the Gullet is bigger because it involves ships and CGI and things, but we'll eat well, even if we have it at a TV scale instead of the mind-boggling book scale. Even Battle of the Blackwater was mostly on screen for me in the TV show, because they asked for more money, and it was not as big as it was in the book. But I was fine. They covered it reasonably well as a major event. I'll get back to this, but I am worried about Lakeshore. That is one of my big points of this video. But before I get to the last one, the fourth and final one, which we know is in there, First Tumbleton, I need to give more context first. Now I want to turn to things which I do think will be on screen, not cut, not mentioned off screen, but they will be on screen, but only briefly. That they'll describe it more than they show it. They'll show a little, but not treated as one of the 4 set pieces. Not as trimmed down as Burning Mill was either, but bits of it. And this is just common sense, that I do think we will see the Battle of the Honeywine in condensed form, because it's a great way to prominently introduce Alicent's youngest son, Daeron, and his dragon Targaryen. Though I think it'll be all of 2 minutes long. Granted, 2 minutes is actually a really long time in a prestige drama because it's very economical with screen time. If you ever look up one of those screen time minute-by-minute breakdowns of a season, like Oscar Tully had 8 minutes of screen time in Season 2, and he had a whole character arc. So like 2 minutes of a really intense thing. The comparison I keep going back to is the Stepstones battle in 3rd episode of Season 1. It wasn't that long, but it still felt like a set piece. And bits of it in there. So just, along with me now, mentally picture this in your mind's eye, like a lot of it could just be stock footage of Hightower soldiers from Rook's Rest, plus some shots edited in CGI of Targaryen flying around. That mentally picture you have this Hightower column reused from another battle of guys, of stuntmen, and they're surrounded by enemy stuntmen carrying Tarly shields, or the other side carrying Beesbury, Caswell, and Rowan sigils. The great thing about sigils and logos is they're shorthand without actually having to introduce new speaking characters. Like, I don't think they're going to fully round out the 2 Allens, Alan Tarly or Tom Flowers of House Caswell, things like that, but they could, like, have Orban pointing at a group of stuntmen carrying Caswell heraldry on their shields and go, "Oh no, Tom Flowers of Caswell is outflanking us. Oh no, those soldiers over there are being led by Alan Tarly." You wouldn't actually even need to cast Alan Tarly, just mention that's who their leader is. And shields and heraldry, that's what they're for on the battlefield, for identifying soldiers. And I do have faith in these producers understood that for Rook's Rest, they said, no, it makes the world feel bigger to have more than one house. We can't just have them all be Hightowers. We have to show people carrying shields with the heraldry of the Crownlander houses that they've press-ganged into following them. The Rosbys, the Stokeworths, the Darklands made it feel a lot bigger. Did they introduce a speaking role for House Rosby or House Stokeworth? No. But they were part of the narrative, and we could understand this is a condensation of a wider thing from the book. It is a shorthand for it, and we'll have fun making videos for TV-only people going, well, this is the full story of what happened, but they did a decent gloss of it within 2 minutes. This is what a TV adaptation does. So I think they'll handle that as well as they've handled other battles. So in my mind's eye, I see this being all of 2 minutes, showing a Hightower column surrounded by guys carrying Tarly and Rowan shields. But then, oh no, here's Targaryen sweeping down and burning them out to save the day. And I imagine it being about as much screen time as back in Season 1 at the Stepstones battle. How much was Seasmoke actually on screen in that? 2 minutes less? But you just quickly see him swooping in to burn the guys surrounding, to exact same thing, save Daemon who is surrounded, and then another bombing run against their archers. That's like 2 shots. And it would be enough to introduce Targaryen and Daeron. And so because it feeds into introducing Daeron, but most of it would be them describing the battle after it happens. I imagine most of this would be them cutting to aftermath. Here's a field full of corpses of Tarly and Rowan soldiers and going, Daeron really saved the day. Let's knight him. He's Daeron the Daring. Well, thank you, my lord, but the victory belongs to Targaryen. Like, I don't think that would even need to be a major set piece, but I think we're going to get it just for plot mechanics of introducing this new character. Even more so than that, I do not think this will even have that much screen time, I think we'll get it, is the Butcher's Ball. I think we need to see it on screen because it involves a major character death. Kristen Cole is killed in it. But the honey wine is an actual battle in the narrative. Might be a brief one on screen, but it's a battle. Even in universe, the Butcher's Ball is a slaughter. That it was a laughably one-sided slaughter because the Green Army broke and panicked. And they just slaughtered them. They said it was the most decisive battle of the war because they had worn down Kristen's army through scorched earth tactics. They were bleeding them dry through attrition and harassment attacks. They were exhausted. Then they woke up and they were completely surrounded on all sides. Their commander was killed at the beginning of it, and they just dissolved into panic. So, I mean, it's kind of in universe. They do tell Kristen, he challenges them, at least face me in an epic duel to spare my men, and they respond by shooting him with arrows, and they stand over his body and go, no, we explicitly do not want men singing songs about how bravely you died. Your choices killed tens of thousands of people starting this war. We're not going to let the Butcher's Ball be this epic battle in universe, you see. So because of that, you would see this. You would see for all of 2 minutes Kristen's army being surrounded. It's mostly about Kristen's death, which is explicitly just he gets shot with arrows. There is no duel. And then see his men running and panicking, see the Blacks, see the Riverlords and Stark guys running towards the camera, sword in hand, then cut to piles of Greens dead, among them Kristen. So I think that'll be on screen. I in no way think it would even involve any action. I think the only action in it will be Kristen getting shot with arrows. You won't even see his men really getting slaughtered. You'll see they'll cut to the aftermath. And I'm fine with that. Even more, if you had the screen time for Butcher's Ball, I would actually recommend cutting it to devote to Honey Wine, right? Because it's more of a battle. So I think we're going to get those two events. I just don't think they're really one of the 4 major events. I don't think anyone's going to argue otherwise. Generally, what I've seen from other channels like Red Team Review also talking about this, I agree with his view, but I wrote this before I saw his, but I'm just telling you now, pretty much aligned with that. But this leads us to the 4th and last of the major events. Will probably be the first Battle of Tumbleton. I saved this for last out of order, not because I think, it's the 4th most likely. I mean, we're definitely going to get Tumbleton in Season 3. Because we're already getting reports leaking out that they're constructing Tumbleton sets, at least in studios. Waiting on the spy photos, but we're definitely getting Tumbleton. That is one of the 3. The reason I put it 4th is because it's chronologically last. That what I'm arguing is I think this will be the season finale cliffhanger battle. Problem is that the exact endpoint is still a little fuzzy, and the real question we are left with at the end of this video, that we know it's Battle of the Gullet, Fall of King's Landing, and Tumbleton. Question is the storming of the Dragon Pit going to be at the very end of Season 3? I don't think they have enough time to do that. Because it happens after first Tumbleton. Inherently, it's because everyone panicked because of the loss of Tumbleton. There's too much to cover in only 8 episodes, so I consider it very unlikely. Martin did mention in his Butterfly Spoilers blog post that he was told of Helena's death, but he either might have been speaking loosely or that might have simply been reshuffled since then. Because it's right at the end point. I think it is possible that Helena dies in literally the last 2 minutes of the finale, but that they would save the storming of the Dragon Pit for the Season 4 premiere. Equally possible is that they'll push Helena's death into the Season 4 premiere itself. They reshuffle stuff like that all the time. That I think Episode 8, the cliffhanger is first Tumbleton, the betrayal's at it, oh no, everyone reacts to that by 50 minutes into it. And then almost like a Marvel movie mid-credits scene, though not mid-credits, just the last 30 seconds, 60 seconds before the credits drop, you see Helena's death. And then that's the cliffhanger, and they're saving the riots for later. Helena could die, I'm not arguing that. Maybe she will, maybe she won't. What I'm saying is, the storming of the Dragon Pit is such an involved sequence with so many dozens to hundreds of stuntmen, with lots of dragon CGI, there physically isn't time to do it. But this comes back to the question of just because they should do something doesn't necessarily mean they will, unfortunately. Yes, of course, we know trying to rush to the storming of the Dragon Pit will overstuff the season. There isn't enough time to do it. The other issue is, because the other 3 out of 4 major events are locked, and this is the central question here, I have this mental image of the battle by the lakeshore and the storming of the dragon pit being balanced on two scales. Because one or the other will be the fourth major event. They can't have both, because each of these is what you'd call a major event. If they had all of them, Condal would have said 5. He said there's 4. So if we find out they're doing the storming of the dragon pit in season 3, that means they glossed over the battle by the lakeshore and aren't treating it as a Rook's Rest scale major event, which will be very disappointing. Because like I said about whether you should or not, this is the main subplot for the Stark and Lannister characters. Remember when the show began and everyone was asking how much are the Starks and Lannisters in it, and we tell them, well, not really that much. I mean, we correctly anticipated, well, there is a Lannister on the small council, you'll see him a little, but that the Starks have barely been in the show so far. And this is what the Starks were doing. It's while the Targaryens were off on the East Coast in the central front of the war, in the middle of the country, in the Riverlands, it was Starks versus Lannisters fighting in the Riverlands all over again. Feels there, the nostalgia, but otherwise, remember at the beginning of the show how weird it would have been to say, well, we're cutting out all storylines with the Starks and Lannisters. This is what they do. So it would be bizarre purely from a marketing perspective. Not even that, well, this is a good story. I'm saying, what crazy person would cut out the stories of the Starks and Lannisters? Then again, there's that whole question of, we know there was an alternate take of the season 2 finale where they did show Cregan Stark coming south with the Winter Wolves, which they changed for the aired version. And I'm back and forth on what that might even imply they're going to do. I really don't know. And they might change their minds. But apparently their idea for giving the Starks more to do was actually have Cregan come south with his army. That's a bit of a condensation, but fair enough. I understand it's a TV show. If we lose Lakeshore, we're losing the subplot with the Starks and Lannisters, and they won't compensate with another one. So Lakeshore is balanced against storming of the Dragon Pit. That is the point of this video. The good news is we won't have to wait until next year. Because by definition, a major event set-piece action sequence isn't something they can hide. I mean, guys, just tell me in the comments. We knew Rook's Rest was happening. Not just spy photos. We had all of the spy drones and the people in ghillie suits and camo. We had 10 to 20 minutes of spy footage of Rook's Rest because they filmed it out on location in a public area with hundreds of stuntmen. And we could identify what was happening because they were soldiers prominently carrying heraldry, sigils on their shields. So I have hope. I'm feeling hopeful about this, that within like 3 months, we will know what is in. We will know if Lakeshore is in because we will see them filming it. And our fears will go away. That if we see spy photos of a major battle scene like Rook's Rest, but it's guys carrying Stark and Lannister shields, I will tell you with certainty that the storming of the Dragon Pit is saved for the season 4 premiere. But if we instead get spy photos from all the drones flying over Leavesden Studios that they're filming all of these riot scenes in the King's Landing sets, that means we're getting the storming of the Dragon Pit and not Lakeshore. So please like and subscribe, because this is the start of our speculation season that we are now entering season 3 filming. We're going to be getting a lot of spy footage, spy photos, and that's what the game is. Going over the spy photos, trying to figure out what they kept in and what they cut. And this isn't something we wouldn't notice because it's filmed in an interior. Like, we can tell which major battles they're filming because it's too big to hide. My hope, which again, Chekhov's gun, they invested so much screen time setting up the Riverlands front of the war that they're not going to cut the biggest land battle of the war between the Starks and Lannisters at the battle by the Lakeshore. It would be bizarre if that was cut. Then again, maybe there's budget cuts, we don't know. But up to this point, we have no reason to think it has been cut. And I'm fine with, I don't want to rush to the storming of the dragon pit. I want to give these characters time to grow. So I'll make another, as we advance, I'll make, like I did last time and the time before that, these tentative episode outlines for the entire season. Like I said with the director's video I just posted, when we know the directors and we know which episodes they're filming, and then spy photos confirm, okay, this was Rook's Rest, we then can go, okay, Rook's Rest is episode 4, because we know Alan Taylor is doing that. So, like and subscribe. We will find this out within the next 3 months. You won't have to wait until summer 2026 to know what they're doing in terms of these 4 major events.